Have you ever wondered that we receive a lot of information about space by sitting at home only? There were several space technologies and years of research that made this happen. Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Don't skip the video and watch to the end because you're going to receive a lot of interesting information. Space technology is the technology for use in outer space, of course, you knew it, in voyages or other actions beyond Earth's atmosphere, for objectives such as spaceflight, space exploration, and Earth observation. We see this concept being used in a rather new manner every day. The space environment is an adequately unique environment that strives to work in. It always requires modern tools and methods. Many common everyday aids for terrestrial use, such as weather forecasting, remote sensing, satellite navigation systems, satellite television, and some long-distance communication systems, critically bank on space infrastructure. Of the sciences, astronomy and earth science benefit from space technology. New technologies emanating from or simulated by space-related endeavors are frequently thereafter taken advantage of in other financial activities. Now let us have a look at those technologies that load us with all this information. Spacecraft. A spacecraft is a carrier or machine constructed to fly in outer space, a category of artificial satellites. Spacecraft are utilized for a combination of intentions, including communications, Earth observance, meteorology, navigation, space colonization, planetary research, and transportation of humans and cargo. All spacecraft leaving single-stage to orbit vehicles cannot get into space on their own and expect to launch earlier. On a suborbital spaceflight, a space vehicle enters space and then reimburses the soil without giving birth to gain adequate energy or pace to make a full Earth circle. For orbital spaceflights, spacecraft enter shut paths around the Earth or other celestial bodies. Spacecraft employed for mortal spaceflight carry people on board as crew or passengers from the onset or on orbit only, whereas those utilized for robotic space missions operate either autonomously or telerobotically. Robotic spacecraft used to assist scientific study are space probes. Robotic spacecraft that persist in orbit around a planetary body are artificial satellites. Satellites. A satellite is an item that is purposely positioned into orbit. These items are called artificial satellites to differentiate them from natural satellites such as Earth's moon. On the 4th of October 1957, the Soviet Union launched the world's initial artificial satellite, Sputnik 1. Heretofore then, nearly 8,900 satellites from more than 40 countries have been initiated. According to a 2018 calculation, about 5,000 persisted in orbit. Of those, about 1,900 were operational, while the remaining had surpassed their valuable lives and become space debris. Satellites are used for several motives. Among numerous other applications, they can be utilized to give rise to star maps and maps of planet surfaces, and also send pictures of planets they are initiated into. Common types encompass military and civilian Earth observation satellites, communication satellites, navigation satellites, weather satellites, and space telescopes. Space stations and human spacecraft in orbit are also satellite sites. Satellites can regulate by themselves or as part of a larger network, a satellite formation, or a satellite constellation. Space telescopes. The James Webb Space Telescope, or JWST, is a space telescope designed mainly to conduct infrared astronomy. The most influential telescope ever initiated into space, its extremely improved infrared solution and motion will enable it to view objects too old, distant, or swoon for the Hubble Space Telescope. This is anticipated to facilitate a wide range of examinations across the areas of astronomy and cosmology, such as remarks on the first stars and the formation of the first galaxies, and detailed atmospheric characterization of potentially habitable exoplanets. JWST was launched in December 2021 on a European Space Agency, or ESA, Ariane 5 rocket from Kourou, French Guiana, and as of June 2022 is undergoing testing and alignment. Once operational, expected about the end of June 2022, JWST is intended to succeed the Hubble as NASA's flagship mission in astrophysics. JT is the formal beneficiary of the Hubble Space Telescope, or HST, and since its major emphasis is on infrared astronomy, it's also a successor to the Spitzer Space Telescope. JWST will far exceed both those telescopes, being eligible to see many more and much older stars and galaxies. Observing the infrared spectrum is a key procedure for achieving this because of the cosmological redshift and because it better penetrates obscuring dust and gas. This enables observation of dimmer, cooler objects. Since water and carbon dioxide in the Earth's atmosphere strongly absorbs most infrared, ground-based infrared astronomy is restricted to taper wavelength ranges where the atmosphere absorbs slightly stronger. Besides, the climate itself emits in the infrared spectrum frequently irresistible light from the subject being examined. This gives rise to a space telescope usable for infrared observation. Space stations. A space station is a spacecraft capable of supporting a human crew in orbit for an extended period of time and is, therefore, a type of artificial satellite, i.e., a type of orbital spaceflight. Stations must have docking ports to authorize other spacecraft to land to substitute crew and supplies. The goal of conserving an orbital outpost varies depending on the strategy. Space stations have most often been inaugurated for scientific purposes, but military launches have also happened. Space stations have harbored, so far, the only long-duration explicit human existence in space. After the first station, Salyut-1, and its tragic Soyuz 11 crew, space stations have been regulated consecutively since Skylab, having allowed a progression of long-duration direct human presence in space. Stations have been occupied by consecutive crews since 1987, with the Salyut successor. Uninterrupted occupation of stations has been achieved since the system of evolution from there to with its first employment in 2000. The ISS has wanted the increased number of people in orbit at the same time, reaching 13 for the first time duration the 11-day docking of STS-127 in 2009. The concepts of space habitats and structures aimed at as permanent homes for substantial populations through generation ships also fit this definition. They're usually not considered space habitats as they're leading the way for a destination. But the line between the two is vague with substantial extension, and the term space station is occasionally used for both concepts. The first such unnatural satellite in fiction was Edward Everett Hale's The Brick Moon, a realm of bricks, 61 meters across, accidentally undertook into orbit around the Earth with people still on board. Launch vehicle. A launch vehicle or carrier rocket is a rocket-propelled vehicle utilized to carry a payload from Earth's surface to space, usually to Earth's orbit or beyond. A launch system encompasses the launch vehicle, launch pad, vehicle assembly and fueling policies, range security, and other relevant infrastructure. Orbital launch vehicles can be sorted and ascertained on several components, most notably payload mass. Although price points are the main interest for some users, most launch vehicles have been formulated by or for national space programs, with substantial national prestige attached to spaceflight accomplishments. Payloads comprise crewed spacecraft, scientific probes, landers, rovers, and many additional. Orbital spaceflight is hard and costly, with improvement restricted by the underlying as much as human and societal factors. Compels a payload to be stimulated to a very high velocity. In the vacuum of space, reaction forces must be furnished by the ejection of mass, and the result disintegrates the equation. The physics of spaceflight are such that it deteriorates during atmospheric re-entry or on contact with the ground. In contrast, disintegrates are constructed to be regained unchanged and launched likewise. The Falcon 9 is an illustration reusable launch vehicle. WISE and NEO-WISE probe. The Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer performed 2 missions in its first existence as a probe. First, it administered one of the most substantial surveys of the universe in human record, finding out everything from brown dwarf stars, which are frequently nominees for planets, to stellar nurseries. Astronomers are still analyzing the data it took in its massive sky probe. In a follow-up mission named NEO-WISE, the telescope also surveyed the solar system and the quantity of space near Earth for asteroids and comets. Several of these are near-Earth objects, or NEOs, that desperately wanted to be mapped so that we could discern what dangers are prevalent ahead for Earth. Knowing where the NEOs are has helped us comprehend whether we're at a threat or an effect that could potentially be overwhelming. The mission undertook in 2009, and the probe withstood so nicely that the mission was brought in several times to collect more or assist it. Curiosity. The impression you see is a self-portrait taken by the most powerful robot ever to set the wheel upon the Martian regolith. It enlists its older siblings, Spirit and Opportunity, but with an extra influential set of appliances and a large range of tools. The Curiosity rover landed on Mars in 2012 and benefited in its downfall from a breakthrough in technology dubbed a sky crane. Curiosity, also called the Mars Science Laboratory, MSL, has one mission: to research the habitability of Mars. Its devices are formulated to investigate whether there were once conditions on Mars that could promote life as we understand it and to deduce those circumstances still exist today. SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket. Though the Falcon 9 rocket from SpaceX might not have exemplified a tremendous step along technologically, it was insurgent in phases of what it meant for the viability of a commercial room flight enterprise. The initial privately owned space vessel to enable the craft of the Dragon rendezvous with the International Space Station. This commodity of Elon Musk's entrepreneurial fantasies has walked into the niche that NASA's space shuttles once inhabited, and it presages a century where marketable spaceflight might become a fact, turning the solar system into an edition of what the oceans were in the 16th century. Hubble Space Telescope. Launched into orbit in 1990, the Hubble truly is one of the tremendous space devices in the history of society, and it's been revised considerably in the 21st century. Powered by sunlight and readied by multiple devices and cameras for apprehending images of deep space, the Hubble has shown us impressions of the universe that would have been unthinkable for Earth-based telescopes. Using Hubble, we've found out about dark energy, concluded the personalities of quasars, gotten more detailed data from the ancestry of the universe, and cited numerous galaxies at every scene of their life cycles. NASA calculates that over 10,000 scientific papers have been composed based on data collected by Hubble. So now you know which instruments help us to discover space. Hit like, share, and subscribe to stay updated.